All right, let's try and have this conversation again. Undue political interference in some of the country's municipalities is further worsening the instability in the local government sphere. That's according to the Minister of Co-operative Governance, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. She says the current state of some municipalities across the country needs urgent interventions, and she was speaking at the Local Government Indaba, which was held in KZN. Let's speak now to KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala, who was also there at that particular Indaba. In fact, he did address, and I hope this is a better line to you. When you were speaking earlier on, as I was listening to you, you were talking about the importance of this Indaba, and you also said that this should not be another talk shop. In fact, there needs to be now action at the back of, even the AG's report, as you were also mentioning there. How then do you ensure that this becomes a reality and not just talk that ended in those particular closed doors?
Thanks a lot. We have analyzed the AG's report and identified key areas that are of concern. We have then developed a plan to intervene through COGTA, assist all municipalities that are facing problems to turn around the situation. What the AG indicated are the observations that we have also noted in most cases. These will include lack of consequence management from the leadership and the senior management in the municipalities. It also includes the lack of capacity due to the fact that in some positions you will find that the councils appoint people who are not qualified and experienced enough. The third is that due to the lack of capacity, there is then a failure to implement projects. As a result, you find conditional grants being forfeited and returned back to the National Treasury. So we've developed plans to address each of these areas that have been identified by the Auditor General. And today's platform was to then say these are shortcomings, and that is what each municipality needs to do to turn around the situation.
There's another concern that you also raised when you were addressing, you were saying, of course, there's that worrying issue of employees who continue to do business with the state. Any, because this is not a new thing, any suggestions then or implementations, things that you're going to be implementing to ensure that this doesn't continue to happen, because it's not new. We keep hearing about this year in, year out.
Indeed, from the AG's report, we will then identify all of those municipalities where there are officials who do business with the state, and then instruct those municipalities to take disciplinary actions, because we cannot have that situation. We must enforce consequence management. That also borders on corruption. Therefore, state organs, relevant state organs should also investigate those instances.
And when it comes then to, some of the municipalities that are regressing, that we also saw with disclaimers, you're thinking of Amajuba, for example, being one of those. Surely there's got to be something that is done here, because officials cannot continue with business as usual when it comes to some of these municipalities that are showing signs of regressing.
Yes, and that's why we are saying the first point is to identify all of those municipalities, such as Amajuba, Undue, the Umkhanyakude, and then have a plan for each municipality. And through COGTA, we must evoke Section 154, which calls on provincial and national government to support local municipalities. And therefore, we will evoke that and then that section and ensure intervention. If those municipalities don't improve, we will analyze, and if the causal factor of the lack of improvement would be the municipality itself, we will then have to intervene decisively through Section 139.
Does that also, take into account the fact that there must be officials who get fired, essentially, because in some of these instances, it looks like the lack of consequence management is also hampering service delivery?
Yes, I raised that point sharply during this Indaba, that there is a decline in performance of municipalities. Yet there is no one who is fired, no one who's taken through the disciplinary processes. And we would want to see disciplinary processes being instituted in cases where there is poor performance or there are elements of mismanagement that are prevailing.
One of the things that, I was also listening to you talk about, which is of grave concern, is issues around the floods. And you were saying that when it comes to that ad hoc committee involving different political parties, there appears to be a lack of synergy there. There's no, working together as one government in order to really address the concerns of the people on the ground. What impact is that happening, and what are some of these differences? Because we also saw in the public domain issues around this 1 billion rand, some saying it's not going to wait, needed to go, but we know that it was not only for KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes, that miscommunication on its own should have not happened, because it was clear from the beginning that 1 billion was not meant for KwaZulu-Natal. Yet an impression was created that this was 1 billion allocated for KwaZulu-Natal. But further to that, you find ministers going all out to public, saying we have not submitted the application for funding to repair the infrastructure. Yet we had submitted it at the beginning of May, and there was acknowledgement from the relevant offices. So that miscommunication is still a problem. But more than that, when the national government or the provincial government, for that matter, realized that some municipalities are struggling, there is that calls on that structure, the upper structure, to intervene and support the local sphere rather than to go public and accuse the local government or provincial government of not doing what they are supposed to do.
So how then do you begin to address this issue? Because you are still having people that, are waiting for houses. Others are still waiting for some kind of assistance in other areas. They are still complaining about access to water. Infrastructure still needs to be repaired. So how do you then put aside this politicking and these squabbles and really be able to ensure that people on the ground are able to get these services they deserve?
Yes, it is through direct engagement that we will be able to take up these issues. And we did take up these issues last week with the minister in the presidency, and he committed that he will be engaging with relevant ministers so that we will meet and have a synergized approach.
All right, Premier, let's then leave it there for now. And of course, I wish we had more time to talk about other things. But of course, you will be also talking in the coming days about the July unrest, which we saw last year. And as you will share then your reflections. But let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. That was KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala talking to us about that local government indaba that we saw taking place in the province a little earlier on today. We brought it to you live here on SABC. At the same time, looking at the squabbles that are laid bare when it comes to improving the lives of people post the KZN floods.